The last thing we want right now is for people to worry about job security. That's why I've asked our team to start drafting legislation to protect workers and families. If this law is passed, it will ensure that if you are in quarantine because you're experiencing symptoms or you've been asked to self-isolate, you will not lose your job. If you're a parent and you need to stay home to look after the kids while schools are closed, you will not lose your job. And we're going to remove the requirement for a doctor's note if you are in isolation at home due to COVID-19 symptoms.
That's Premier Doug Ford, Ontario Premier Doug Ford, from a bit earlier today. Welcome back to Power in Politics. I'm Vash Capellos. I want to give you a bit of a lay of the land, where things stand with cases of COVID-19 in this country. As of this afternoon, there were more than 400 confirmed or presumptive cases across the country. The provinces where you will see most of those cases: Ontario, 177, 32 new today. Quebec has 50, and BC with 103 cases, 30 new cases there, as well as 3 new deaths, all linked. There's 4 deaths in total in BC, all linked to the Lynn Valley Care Home. So again, more than 400 confirmed or presumptive cases across the country. Huge health effects, lots of instructions from various public health bodies saying stay inside, don't go out unless you have to. It depends where you live, but those are some of the kinds of instructions we're getting. There's also instructions coming from public health officials to businesses like restaurants and bars to close down or just do delivery and takeout. Obviously, that's going to have a big economic impact, and we are awaiting announcements, a big announcement from the federal government tomorrow. They're saying they will, as early as tomorrow, that is, announce a significant fiscal stimulus package. Lots of questions for people, of course, who work in those industries. I want to bring in now Monty McNaughton. He's the Ontario Minister of Labour. You'll see in that announcement, hi, Minister, but we saw in that announcement from Premier Ford and yourself, as well as other ministers, that there is legislation, you say, coming directly to address some of the issues that workers will face. Can you tell me a bit about what specifically that legislation will aim to do?
Well, there's obviously lots of uncertainty out there amongst the families in Ontario and across Canada. We're taking action here in Ontario to amend the Employment Standards Act to ensure that workers' jobs are protected. So as you heard the Premier say earlier, if people are in quarantine or self-isolation, or they have to stay home with their kids, we want them to know that the government will stand shoulder to shoulder with them and these jobs will be protected.
Specifically, what does that mean, though? Does that mean that you'll be offering them financial help, direct payment, something like that? Or will you be requiring employers to make sure there's a job to go back to when hopefully this is all over? What exactly will that legislation mean?
Well, number one, we don't want any employers asking for sick notes. So that'll be part of the legislation to eliminate sick notes in Ontario during this crisis. Secondly, it's to ensure that these jobs are protected. People can't be terminated because you're staying home in self-isolation or quarantine, or when the March break is over here in Ontario, if mom or dad decides to stay home with their kid and needs to stay home with their child, that their job will be there when they go back to work.
How enforceable is that? And I'm thinking, just to play devil's advocate, of a lot of small businesses who simply, it depends on what happens, obviously, with the federal government, what kind of assistance they rely on, but a lot of small businesses that can't afford to keep people employed if there's no ability to sell a meal, let's say. So how exactly will that work?
Well, obviously, the health and safety of families in Ontario is our top priority. We know there are economic hardships out there in the business community and amongst workers, but we just don't want people going in to work sick. And that's also another priority of this legislation, is to ensure that those workers can stay home and yet know that their job will be there for them. We're looking forward to seeing what the federal government unveils tomorrow. Our Minister of Finance, Rod Phillips, announced that on March 25th, next Wednesday, Ontario will be providing an economic update with some hundreds of millions of dollars that'll help people in the healthcare profession and other sectors of the economy. I've already reached out to the Federal Minister of Labour to ensure that the federal system is there for these workers who can't work.
And just so that I'm clear, what's the timeline for this legislation?
We're going to be moving as quickly as possible in the next number of days. We've already reached out to the official opposition in Ontario, as well as the other independent members, the Liberals here in the province. So we want to get this done as quickly as possible. We really want to, send that message to workers that we're going to be with them shoulder to shoulder. And this is a very fair and balanced approach, balancing the needs of the business community as well.
Not too long ago, we heard from public health officials in Ontario who said that they are recommending that restaurants, bars, nightclubs, and the like shut down, at least not to have people inside their premises, but rather just to rely on takeout and delivery. It was only a recommendation. Why just a recommendation? Why isn't this an order?
Well, that was the advice from the Chief Medical Officer of Health in Ontario, as well as he mentioned, that he recommends that people shouldn't be in crowds over 50 people. Look, I think we need to take these seriously, and we as a government follow the recommendations of the Chief Medical Officer of Health. I know Health Minister and Deputy Premier Christine Elliott updates the public and communicates regularly. And I know this came out a couple of hours ago.
Yeah, do you think it's enough though? And I'm asking because I'm guessing like myself, I get a lot of people asking me because they're confused, right? What is a recommendation? Are they telling me I have to, or is this just a suggestion? Given the number of cases in Ontario specifically, and the fact that the types of transmission there is, does your government need to be more forceful about this? Do you need to be explicit rather than, rely on recommendations?
Well, we're taking decisive action. I mean, we announced today the legislation that's coming forward to protect workers' jobs. This, as you know, is moving minute by minute. Christine Elliott, the health minister, has been updating the public regularly. The premier was out in front of the media today communicating also with the public. There'll be more to say in very short order on some of these other recommendations.
One quick final question for you. The federal government, we know we're expecting that stimulus package as early as tomorrow, but they also made an announcement where the border is concerned. My understanding, at least from the public health officials, is that Ontario is particularly concerned about the number of people coming either back from the U.S. or from the United States into Canada who are then, end up with COVID-19. Do you feel that the federal government should limit the entering of American citizens into Canada as well?
Well, I know Premier Ford was very complimentary today to the federal government, and he's been in regular communications with Prime Minister Trudeau and the Deputy Prime Minister as well. Look, our main concern is ensuring that those goods can still continue to flow over the border to keep the economy going as much as we can. And we'll wait, further direction, but we certainly support what the federal government did today.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Minister McNaughton, thank you so much for making time for us this evening. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's Monty McNaughton, Ontario's Minister of Labour. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.